I still remember how my heart pounded the moment the test showed 2 pink lines. I was sitting alone in our tiny bathroom, the fluorescent light flickering overhead. My fingers trembled as I held the plastic stick, realizing that after years of being told I couldn't conceive, I was finally pregnant. It felt like the biggest miracle of my life. Every second that passed, my chest tightened in a mix of disbelief and overwhelming joy. "Daniel!" I called out, my voice echoing in our small hallway. He rushed in, concern etched on his face. The second he saw the test in my hand, his eyes widened. For a moment I saw pure, unfiltered happiness light up his features. He wrapped me in his arms, and I thought this was the start of a beautiful new chapter for us. I clung to that hope as tears rolled down my cheeks, certain nothing could overshadow this blessing. But as we stood there, my ear pressed against his chest, I caught the faintest tremor in his heartbeat. His grip, which had been so firm, loosened ever so slightly. Something about his expression shifted, just a flicker of uncertainty or maybe fear. I told myself I was imagining things. After all, this was supposed to be the happiest day of our lives, right? Yet a small doubt took root in my mind, refusing to be ignored. Later that evening we tried to celebrate in our humble living room. I could barely sit still. My heart felt like it was beating twice as fast, fueled by a giddy excitement about the future. Daniel popped open a non-alcoholic cider, pouring us each a glass to toast our unexpected fortune. "To our little miracle," he said softly, clinking his glass against mine. I smiled, but for a split second I noticed his eyes dart away. The tension behind his forced grin made my stomach twist. I couldn't help pressing him gently. "Are you sure you're okay? You seem off." He hesitated, swirling the bubbly liquid in his glass. "It's just a lot to process," he finally whispered. "I'm happy, I promise. This changes everything." He reached out, brushing his thumb across my cheek, and for an instant the warmth in his touch reassured me. I told myself we just needed time to adjust. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed every detail of the day, from the joy I felt discovering the pregnancy to the strange flicker in Daniel's gaze. Around 3 a.m. I crept out of bed and made myself a cup of herbal tea, hoping to soothe my restless nerves. I stood by the kitchen window, staring into the darkness, questioning if I was overthinking his reaction. Perhaps it was just nerves or the pressure of sudden responsibility. Still, a gnawing sense of unease refused to release its hold on me. Days passed, and although we both tried to slip into a comfortable routine, me with prenatal vitamins and reading baby books, Daniel researching what kind of stroller we'd eventually need, there was this underlying tension. He'd go quiet at odd moments, sometimes stepping away to answer phone calls in hushed tones. I'd strain to catch pieces of conversation, but all I heard was muffled murmuring behind closed doors. I remember one afternoon, I noticed him typing frantically on his phone, brow furrowed. When I softly asked, "Is everything okay?" he jumped, nearly dropping the device. He forced a laugh and said, "Just work stress." But I couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something. Normally he loved sharing every detail of his day, and now he was turning secretive. Yet I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was planning a surprise for me or anxious about finances. I pushed these doubts aside, telling myself that love meant trusting him completely. Still, the atmosphere felt charged with an invisible storm. Every time I approached him, hoping for the easy, comfortable chatter we used to share, I sensed an invisible barrier. My joy began to waver, overshadowed by this growing anxiety. As much as I wanted to keep my focus on our miraculous baby, the worry in the pit of my stomach intensified with each passing hour. One night, just as I was about to drift off, I felt Daniel slip out of bed. Through the haze of half-sleep, I heard him move into the hallway. It was past midnight, and I listened as the soft click of his phone screen broke the silence. I couldn't make out his words, but the tension in his voice was unmistakable. My heart thudded uncomfortably as I pretended to stay asleep, unsure whether to confront him or wait until he was ready to share whatever weighed on his mind. By the time I heard him tiptoe back, I lay there with my eyes closed, breathing quietly, pretending to be lost in slumber. But the whirlwind of suspicion in my head wouldn't let me rest. I felt trapped between the miracle of my pregnancy and the unsettling certainty that something was very wrong. Lying there in the darkness, all I could think was, I've waited so long for this baby. Why do I feel like this wonderful moment is slipping through my fingers? I never expected that the life growing inside me would be accompanied by such dread, or that Daniel's delight would seem so guarded. Deep down, I sensed that everything was about to change in ways I couldn't yet imagine. There was a secret lurking in the shadows, and it was only a matter of time before it surfaced. With each passing day, my joy was tinged with trepidation, a silent countdown to the moment when I'd finally uncover what Daniel was hiding. And when that secret finally emerged, I feared it might shatter our fragile happiness forever. I spent the next few days trying to quiet that relentless unease, but it clung to me. Mornings became a delicate dance of forced smiles and half-hearted laughter. While Daniel insisted on cooking me breakfast, always hovering making sure I got enough nutrients for the baby, I couldn't ignore the knot in my stomach. Every sweet gesture felt undercut by the lingering sense that something was simmering beneath his kindness. One afternoon, after returning from a routine prenatal checkup, I found Daniel sitting on the couch, gaze distant. He was holding his phone tightly, knuckles white. The minute I walked in, he jumped to his feet and stashed the phone in his pocket, plastering on a nervous grin. "You're back. How was everything?" he asked, voice pitched higher than usual. For a moment, I wanted to confront him right then and there, ask what was really going on, demand to see his phone. But I felt a pulse of fear. Did I truly want to open Pandora's box, or should I cling to the comfort of not knowing? My mind spun with possibilities, and I forced a smile, simply telling him my checkup went well and that I'd gained a healthy amount of weight for the baby. He reached for my hand, guiding me gently to the sofa. "I'm glad everything's okay," he murmured, but his eyes flickered away from mine. In that instant, I realized he was actively avoiding my gaze. My heart sank. Whatever he was hiding, it was serious enough to make him unable to meet my eyes. In the weeks that followed, my pregnancy symptoms became more pronounced. Nausea in the mornings, odd cravings at night. Daniel did his best to be supportive, fussing over me with endless cups of ginger tea, soothing music, and quiet reassurances that he loved me. I was torn between gratitude for his attentiveness and a nagging suspicion that his guilt fueled his concern. One evening, as I was folding freshly laundered baby clothes, I'd bought them on impulse, giddy with excitement, I heard the muffled sound of Daniel's voice seeping through the bedroom wall. He had stepped outside onto the porch, clearly trying not to be overheard. Pressing my ear to the door, I caught only fragments of his hushed words. "I promise. Handling it. Soon." My heart hammered against my chest. Each snippet seemed to confirm the existence of a reality I knew nothing about. I retreated into the nursery we were preparing, a tiny spare room we'd painted a soft, pale yellow. Standing in the middle of that room, I let my fingertips drift across the edge of the crib. A swirling mix of hope and dread made my head spin. This space was meant to be a haven for our baby, a symbol of new beginnings. Instead, it felt overshadowed by a looming threat I couldn't fully grasp. That night, Daniel tried to be intimate, running his fingers lightly over my shoulder. But I felt myself recoil and his face crumpled with hurt. "Did I do something wrong?" he asked, voice trembling. I wanted to shout, "I know you're lying to me." Instead, I swallowed back the words. "I'm just exhausted," I whispered, lying down and turning my back to him. I could sense him hovering, perhaps waiting to say something else, but eventually he settled down with a resigned sigh. In the silence, my heart pounded so loudly I was sure he could hear it. For the next couple of days we walked on eggshells around each other. I buried myself in everything related to the pregnancy, doctor's appointments, prenatal vitamins, yoga sessions, and tried to focus on the incredible life growing inside me. But the atmosphere at home felt heavier than ever, as though we were both tiptoeing around a secret that threatened to consume us. Finally, after another restless night, I decided to take a bold step. If Daniel wouldn't open up, I'd have to find a way to uncover the truth myself. I began noticing small details, an unfamiliar name occasionally popping up on his phone screen, quickly dismissed with a swipe, receipts from stores I'd never heard of, tucked away in his wallet. Each clue piled onto my growing mountain of suspicions. Late one evening, just as I was drifting off, I felt his side of the bed dip as he got up again. My pulse raced. I couldn't keep pretending this was normal. Slipping out of bed, I crept to the doorway, careful not to make a sound. Through the dim hallway light, I caught a glimpse of him on his phone, eyes flicking anxiously at the screen. My heart hammered as I thought, I can't keep pushing this aside. Whatever he was hiding felt huge, and I sensed it could shatter our carefully constructed life. Yet the only thing more terrifying than learning the truth was continuing to live a lie. The last thing I saw before I hurried back to bed was Daniel's expression. Haunted, torn. And in that moment I knew something was about to crack and it might destroy everything we'd built. The next morning I woke up with a determination that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Something in Daniel's behavior told me the truth was closer than ever, hovering just beneath the surface. I couldn't stand the tension anymore. It was eating away at my excitement over the pregnancy, stealing precious moments of joy I wanted to savor. I was done tiptoeing around the elephant in the room. If Daniel refused to talk, I'd have to look for answers myself. While he was busy making us breakfast, I slipped into his study and booted up his computer. My heart thudded so loudly I could hardly think straight. I hated the idea of snooping, but fear drove me forward. After a few nervous minutes, I found myself scanning through his emails. Most were benign, work messages, spam newsletters. Then, near the bottom of the inbox, I spotted a string of exchanges with a name I'd never seen before. Amelia W. The subject lines were vague, but my stomach flipped when I saw one that read, "About our child." My hands trembled. I hovered the mouse pointer over the email, debating if I should read it. A wave of guilt almost stopped me, but curiosity and dread won out. Before I could click, I heard Daniel's footsteps outside the door. My body froze, pulse hammering so hard it felt like a drumbeat. Quickly I closed the emails, clearing the browser history in a panic. He appeared in the doorway a second later, holding a mug of tea. "I was wondering where you'd gone," he said, his smile tight. His gaze darted to the computer, then back to me. For a split second, I was sure he knew exactly what I'd been trying to do. My mouth went dry as I forced a casual laugh, muttering something about needing to look up nursery ideas. He nodded, not fully convinced but seemingly too anxious to push the issue. Later that evening, a relentless swirl of questions filled my mind. Who was Amelia W.? What did "about our child" mean? My worst suspicions loomed like dark clouds, overshadowing every tender moment. I tried to distract myself by focusing on the baby. In bed, I placed my hands over my slight bump, attempting to visualize a future free from secrets. But each time I closed my eyes, I saw that email subject line glaring back at me. Over the next few days, Daniel's behavior continued to shift unpredictably. One moment he'd be overly affectionate, kissing my forehead and promising we'd figure out everything together. The next he'd become distant, lost in thought, or sneaking off for urgent phone calls. This emotional whiplash made me resent him for controlling the narrative and leaving me in the dark. Desperate for guidance, I confided in my closest friend, Melissa. I hadn't planned on revealing so much, but the words tumbled out in a rush when she asked how I was handling the pregnancy. We sat in her living room, a small scented candle flickering between us. She listened intently, her eyes widening as I explained the suspicious phone calls, the email I'd nearly opened, and Daniel's strange aloofness. "Oh, honey," she murmured, gently squeezing my hand. "You need to confront him. You can't keep going like this, pregnant and stressed out. It's not good for you or the baby." I nodded, tears welling in my eyes. "I know. I'm scared of what I'll find out. What if it's worse than I can handle?" My voice cracked, the weight of my own words slamming into me. I'd been so consumed by suspicion, I'd never paused to imagine the aftermath if my suspicions were true. Melissa inhaled softly. "Whatever it is, you can't bury it. Hiding from the truth will only make it fester." She gave me a reassuring hug, and for a brief moment I felt less alone. That night I resolved to speak up. As soon as Daniel came home, I braced myself. The baby kicked for the first time, just a little flutter, and it startled me. A swirl of emotion spread through my chest. It was as if my child was reminding me that this wasn't just about me and Daniel anymore. There was a tiny life depending on me to be strong, to fight for clarity and peace in our home. We ended up in the kitchen, the overhead light casting harsh shadows across Daniel's face. My mouth was dry, but I mustered the courage to say what had been gnawing at me. "Daniel, I can't keep pretending everything's okay. Something's going on and I need to know what it is." He opened his mouth, but no words came. His jaw tensed and he looked away, gripping the edge of the counter so hard his knuckles went pale. My stomach twisted at the sight of him fighting back whatever truth he was reluctant to share. "Please," I whispered, voice trembling. "I'm your wife. We're having a baby. If there's something you need to tell me, just say it. I'd rather face it head on than live in this limbo." For a moment I thought he might finally reveal everything. His eyes misted over and I sensed a deep conflict ripping him apart from within. But then he lowered his gaze, exhaling shakily. "It's nothing," he said almost too quickly. "Work, finances, stress. I promise it's nothing you need to worry about." Anger flared inside me. "How can you stand there and lie to me?" I hissed, tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. "I'm not a child. I deserve to know why you're acting like this." My outburst made him flinch, but he quickly pulled himself together. He reached out a tentative hand, but I yanked mine away, stepping back as my heart thundered. His silence was answer enough. I couldn't force him to speak, and he wasn't ready to tell me the truth. Our marriage felt like it was coming apart at the seams, no matter how much we pretended otherwise. In the suffocating stillness that followed, I felt a sudden wave of dizziness and gripped the kitchen counter for support. Daniel moved closer, concern etched on his features, but I shook my head fiercely. I couldn't bear his touch, not when I knew the secrets he was hiding were wedging an invisible wall between us. I managed to steady myself, but fear rippled through me. If the stress and heartbreak kept building, how would it affect the baby? My entire body felt taut, bracing for an impact I couldn't see yet. One thing was certain. If Daniel wouldn't open up, I'd have to keep pushing until the truth came crashing into the light, no matter the cost. When I finally left the kitchen, locking myself in the bedroom, a suffocating sense of loneliness washed over me. I pressed my hands gently against my abdomen, silent tears tracing down my cheeks. In that moment I made a vow. I would protect my baby at all costs, even if it meant discovering a devastating secret that could tear our family apart. And as I lay awake in bed, listening to Daniel's hushed pacing in the other room, I knew this was just the beginning of a battle that would test every limit of my heart. I woke the next morning with my face pressed against a tear-soaked pillow, my mind buzzing with leftover anger and heartbreak. The sheets beside me were cold. Daniel hadn't come home at all. My heart pounded as I forced myself out of bed, panic churning with every step. Where was he? By noon I drove to his office, desperate for answers. A coworker shrugged uneasily when I asked for him. "He left hours ago," he said, eyes flickering with sympathy. My stomach dropped. If Daniel wasn't at work, where could he be? I remembered a strange address on a crumpled receipt I'd seen in his wallet. My hands shook as I typed it into my GPS. The neighborhood was quiet. Modest houses, neat lawns, everything looking ordinary, until I spotted the address, a small home with a chipped fence. My heart thundered as I knocked on the door. A woman answered, looking startled. Before I could speak, Daniel appeared behind her, his face going pale. Then a little boy peeked around the woman's hip. My breath caught in my throat. He had Daniel's deep brown eyes. For a few agonizing seconds, we all stood frozen, the child staring at me with curiosity. I felt the ground slip beneath me. My voice cracked. "Daniel, who is he?" The woman placed a protective hand on the boy's shoulder. Daniel tried to speak but couldn't. My chest constricted as I realized he had another child, a fact he'd hidden from me. I turned and ran, Daniel shouting my name behind me. Tears blinded me as I fumbled into my car. He banged on the window, but I sped off, raw confusion ripping me apart. When I finally got home, I collapsed on the couch, sobbing until my throat burned. My baby fluttered inside me, a haunting reminder that I wasn't alone in this. Questions hammered my mind. How long had Daniel kept this secret? Was he supporting another family? Did he love them more than me? I pressed a hand to my belly, fighting a wave of nausea. Everything about our life felt like a lie, and I had no idea how to face him again. As evening fell, I heard the door open. My heart lurched, but I couldn't find the strength to move. Soft footsteps approached, then faded. I realized Daniel had gone to the guest room, too afraid, or ashamed, to confront me. In the silence, I whispered to my unborn baby that I'd protect them no matter the cost. Yet deep down I feared that promise might be impossible. The discovery of his child felt like a betrayal so massive it could destroy us forever. I stared at the walls of our home, seeing only illusions where memories once lived. With the secret laid bare, I knew nothing would ever be the same. A hollow numbness clung to me the next morning, and I couldn't shake the nightmare of that little boy's eyes, Daniel's eyes, staring at me from behind the stranger's leg. I lay in bed for what felt like hours, my hands cupping my belly. The baby seemed quieter than usual, as though sensing my turmoil. A lump rose in my throat, guilt mingling with sorrow. Our unborn child deserved a happy home, not the suffocating tension that now filled every corner. Eventually, I forced myself to get up and check on Daniel. I found him slumped in the guest room, eyes red-rimmed, looking like he'd slept in his clothes. For a moment, compassion stirred in my chest. Then I remembered the boy, the secret. My sympathy collided with fresh anger. Daniel lifted his head, his voice scraping the silence. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, not meeting my gaze. I wanted to shout, to demand an explanation, but all that came out was a hoarse whisper. "Why didn't you tell me?" He rubbed the back of his neck, words spilling out in a ragged tumble. "I was afraid. I thought I could handle it on my own. That I could protect you from." "Protect me?" My voice cracked. "From what, Daniel? A whole other life?" He flinched as though I'd slapped him. Silence stretched. I couldn't bear it, so I turned and walked away. My heart pounded as I went into the kitchen and stared at the half-filled baby registry forms scattered on the table. Once upon a time, we'd pored over them together, laughing about nursery themes and possible names. Now those memories felt like someone else's life. I sank into a chair, burying my face in my hands. After a moment, Daniel's hesitant footsteps sounded behind me. He took the seat across from mine, leaving a wide gulf of space between us. "I never wanted this," he began softly, gaze lingering on my swollen abdomen. "Not the lying. Not the pain. But when I found out I had a child." His voice faltered. "It was years ago. We had a brief relationship. I didn't even know she was pregnant until after we got married." My nails dug into my palms as I tried to process his words. "So you've been supporting him in secret? Sneaking out, sending money? What else, Daniel? What else have you been hiding?" He swallowed hard. "At first I panicked. We had just started our life together and I was terrified you'd leave me if you knew. I convinced myself I could keep it separate. Then we found out you were pregnant and everything got more complicated. I thought I could fix it before you ever found out." His confession felt like a punch to the gut. "Fix it? This isn't some fender bender. You have a son. And he's innocent in all of this, just like this baby," I said, pressing a trembling hand to my stomach. "You put us all in an impossible situation." Daniel bowed his head. For a second I almost felt sorry for him, but betrayal still boiled beneath my skin. I stood abruptly, ignoring the dizziness that threatened to tip me over. "I need space," I muttered, grabbing my coat and stepping into the crisp morning air. The cold was a sharp slap against my cheeks, but at least it cleared my spinning head. I wandered aimlessly down our street, the day's mundane normalcy seeming surreal. People walked dogs, neighbors tended gardens. No one had any idea that my life had just exploded. After a while I found myself at a small park. I sat on a worn wooden bench, breathing in the scent of damp grass and trying to quiet the storm in my mind. My phone buzzed. Daniel again, probably. I couldn't bring myself to answer. The baby fluttered and I pressed my hand over the spot, whispering, "I'm so sorry you're caught in the middle of this." A wave of despair rolled over me, leaving me shaky. Part of me wanted to run, to leave Daniel behind and never look back. Another part still ached for the man I thought I knew, the one who'd cradled my face with such tenderness when we learned about our own little miracle. I stayed at the park until long shadows stretched across the grass. The chill in the air eventually drove me home, my limbs stiff with fatigue. Inside I found Daniel standing in the living room, the lights dim. He looked up, relief crossing his face. I was so worried. But I walked right past him without a word. In the bedroom I flicked on the lamp and caught sight of a photo on the dresser. It was from our wedding day. Daniel and I were smiling so brightly, arms wrapped around each other. My heart clenched. It felt like gazing at strangers living a simpler story, one without secrets or lies. Daniel stood in the doorway, the weight of our broken trust pressing in the air between us. "I know I can't fix this overnight," he said softly. "But please, let me try to explain everything." I shook my head. "Daniel, I don't even know if I can look at you without picturing him." His shoulders sagged and he made no move to close the distance. A terrible, yawning emptiness filled the space around us. We were two people sharing a roof but living in completely different realities. As I lay down that night, exhausted tears welled up again. I felt Daniel's presence on the other side of the door, both of us too afraid or too ashamed to cross the threshold. And yet, despite my anguish, a spark of determination blazed within me. I needed answers no matter how painful. The only way forward was through the bitter truth. Whether our marriage would survive it or not, I couldn't say. But I wouldn't let silence bury everything I'd worked so hard to build. Sleep took me in broken intervals, haunted by the image of that boy's face and the echo of Daniel's apologies. By dawn, I realized one thing with absolute clarity. I had to confront his past head-on if I ever wanted a real future for myself and my child. That morning, I woke with a sense of grim determination and a gnawing ache behind my eyes. My first thoughts went to the child I'd seen, the living, breathing proof of Daniel's betrayal. My mind buzzed with 1,000 questions, and no matter how desperately I tried to keep calm for my baby's sake, anxiety gnawed at me from the inside out. Daniel was already in the kitchen, nursing a cup of coffee as though he hadn't slept all night. He glanced up, relief warring with dread in his expression. I lingered in the doorway, arms folded protectively over my growing belly, trying to steel myself. We needed to talk no matter how painful. Let's sit down, I finally managed, gesturing toward the table. I noticed how his shoulders slumped as if bracing for a blow. He moved slowly to the chair across from mine. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence pulsed with too many unspoken words. At last, I sucked in a breath and broke it. How old is he? Daniel's gaze flicked to the tabletop. He's 6, he replied quietly. His name is Caleb. I closed my eyes, feeling the baby shift inside me. 6 years of secrets. I deserve the whole story. My voice quivered, but I forced myself to hold his gaze. He swallowed, then began haltingly. I had no idea at first. His mother, Amelia, and we were together before I met you. It ended quickly. She never told me about her pregnancy, at least not until a year after we'd already married. I got a call out of the blue and there he was. My hands tightened around the edge of the table. The betrayal stung in ways I couldn't articulate. So, when you found out, you just hid it from me? For years. I was terrified, he murmured, eyes rimmed with guilt. I'd convinced myself you'd hate me for keeping a child's secret or think I'd betrayed you somehow. And then everything happened so fast. Our wedding, our future plans. I tried to keep contact minimal, sending money, dealing with legalities. I thought I could handle it without blowing up our life. A harsh laugh escaped me, startling even myself. You did blow it up. By lying. You gave me no chance to face it with you, to share the burden. Did you ever consider telling me the truth? His voice cracked. 1,000 times. But every time I got close, I backed out. And when you got pregnant, I didn't know how to shatter our happiness. My stomach churned. You have no idea how shattered I feel right now, do you? He looked down. I know. I'm so sorry. I pushed away from the table, standing abruptly. The room seemed too small, the air too thick. Stepping over to the sink, I gripped its edge, staring down at a stack of unwashed dishes. Rage, betrayal, heartbreak, each one warred inside me, leaving me dizzy. We're supposed to be partners, I said through gritted teeth. This pregnancy, it was a miracle for us. And now I wonder if our child's just another complication you wanted to handle. The words came out sharper than I intended, but I couldn't hold back the bitterness. Daniel rushed to my side. That's not what I meant, not at all. I love you. I love our baby. His hand hovered over my shoulder, uncertain if he could touch me without causing more pain. I turned to face him, tears pricking my eyes. Then prove it. Be honest from now on. No more secrets. He exhaled a shaky breath. I'll do anything. I promise. My mind spun, questioning if I could trust those words. Part of me wanted to walk away, to protect myself and my unborn child. Another part wanted to believe him, to hope this wasn't the end of us. Unable to decide, I stepped back, arms crossed. You need to tell me everything, every detail about Caleb, about Amelia. This is my life too. Daniel sank onto a nearby stool, rubbing his eyes. I've been seeing them off and on to make sure Caleb is okay, helping with bills, birthdays. He's a good kid. Smart, curious. His voice softened. But I realize I was doing the bare minimum to keep the peace, not really being there for him. And I know that's not fair to him either. Hearing him speak about this child stirred an unexpected pang in me. Anger still raged, but I also felt a distant empathy for an innocent boy caught in a situation he didn't create. So you're a father twice over, I said quietly. And you never once gave me the chance to accept that. He reached out as if to take my hand, but I recoiled. The wound was too raw. Instead, I backed toward the living room, needing space. I need time, Daniel. And I need you to tell me the truth. I mean it, everything. He nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. I understand. I walked away, sinking onto the couch. My heart hammered and my baby shifted anxiously in my belly. The whole house felt claustrophobic, filled with tension I could practically taste. We had years of lies to untangle. And as much as I wanted to curl up and ignore the world, I couldn't. I had a child to protect, a life to plan, whether Daniel would be part of it or not. As I closed my eyes, questions battered me. Could I forgive him? Should I? And what would this unexpected family mean for the future of my own? The only certainty was that I was no longer naive. The truth was out, and there was no going back to the woman I was before Caleb's face upended my life. A sudden chill rushed over my skin. For the first time I saw the path ahead, a painful journey of revelations, choices, and consequences. And at the end of it, I had no idea if we'd still be a family, or shattered fragments of what might have been. I felt numb as the hours passed, my hands idly tracing the curve of my belly while Daniel paced around the house, careful to give me space yet too anxious to leave entirely. Neither of us knew how to proceed, as if we were waiting for a cue that never came. In the late afternoon, when the sun's light began to slant through the windows, I finally told him we needed to talk, really talk, about what would happen next. We ended up in the living room, sitting across from each other on the old sofa, the same place we used to watch cheesy movies and plan our future nursery. Now the air felt thick, as if the walls were closing in on us. Daniel looked torn between hope and fear. I braced myself, determined to push through my anger and find out where we stood. I can't keep living in this suspense, I said quietly. My voice came out hoarse from all the tears I'd shed. You have a son. I'm carrying your child too. What does all of this look like going forward? He ran a shaky hand over his face. I know I can't undo what I did, but I'm ready to face the consequences. If you'll let me. I want to be in Caleb's life properly. And I want to be here for you. For our baby. His words triggered a flash of anger inside me. So now you want to do what's right? After 6 years of hiding the truth from me, from everyone. I bit my lip, trying to steady my trembling voice. Do you expect me to just forgive you and pretend none of this happened? He swallowed hard. I don't expect it to be easy. But I'm begging you for a chance to make amends, to be honest and open from here on out. I shifted, the couch springs squeaking beneath me. Part of me wanted to scream that it was too late, that trust couldn't be pieced back together like a broken cup. But another part whispered that if I walked away now, I'd never know if it could be saved. My baby kicked, as though echoing the inner turmoil that swirled through me. What about Amelia? I asked, forcing myself to say her name. My stomach churned as I remembered the way she'd stood with that little boy, a mother protecting her child. Does she want you back in their life more fully? Are there legal issues? Custody arrangements? He shook his head, eyes flickering with regret. Nothing official. We never went to court. I just sent support whenever she asked. She's been patient up until now because, well, she never wanted to hurt you either. I think she'd be open to letting me see Caleb more, but that means we'll have to figure out a way to involve you too. The thought of being connected to Amelia, possibly co-parenting in some way, felt like a punch to the gut. So you're asking me to welcome her into our lives? This woman you had a child with, who I only discovered existed a few days ago. I'm not sure what I'm asking, he admitted, running a hand through his hair. All I know is Caleb deserves better than what I gave him. And you, his voice broke. You deserve the truth and a husband who's not living a lie. I leaned forward, burying my face in my hands. Even now, a tiny part of me yearned to trust him, to believe we could rebuild from the wreckage. But the weight of betrayal still pressed like a stone on my heart. You've made everything so complicated, I said, voice muffled. And I'm the one left to pick up the pieces. I'm terrified, Daniel. He reached out to rest a tentative hand on my knee, and though I flinched, I didn't pull away completely. Me too, he whispered. But I'm done running. Tears blurred my vision. The question is, can I stop running from you? Because honestly, I don't know if I can trust again. Every time I close my eyes, I see that little boy's face. And I wonder if you ever truly wanted our baby, or if you felt pressured after your secret. His grip on my knee tightened ever so slightly, desperation coding his words. You have to believe me, This baby means the world to me. I never planned for any of this to happen at the same time. The silence that followed felt like a knife's edge between us. Finally, I inhaled slowly, letting my gaze drop to where his hand rested. I could almost feel his heartbeat in that touch. If we're going to try, then you need to be prepared to face everything, including introducing me to Caleb properly, explaining to Amelia that I'm part of this, and being honest about what our marriage really looks like. He nodded, relief mingling with terror. I'll do whatever it takes. I tilted my head back, eyes tracing the ceiling. I'm not saying I forgive you. I don't know if I'm ready for that. But I do think we owe it to both of our children to at least try and handle this with honesty, no matter how painful. For a while neither of us moved. The air felt charged with the weight of what lay ahead, a tangle of emotions, legalities, and relationships. My entire body felt drained, yet a spark of determination flickered at the core of my being. I had to do this for my baby, if not for my marriage. Eventually, Daniel got up and walked to the window, staring out at the dimming sky. I'll set up a time to speak with Amelia, he said, voice low. And then, maybe you and I can sit down with her, see Caleb in a setting that doesn't feel like an ambush. My stomach tightened at the thought, but I found myself nodding slowly. It was the only way forward, facing the truth head-on no matter how much it hurt. As I watched Daniel's silhouette outlined by the fading light, I realized we were standing at the edge of a precipice. One misstep and we'd fall apart completely. But if we were careful, maybe, just maybe, we could find solid ground on the other side. A distant rumble of thunder echoed outside, and I shivered at the sudden chill coursing through me. This wasn't going to be easy. In fact, it might be the hardest thing I'd ever done. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if love alone was enough to guide us through the storm ahead. I can't remember the last time my heart pounded as fiercely as it did when Daniel told me Amelia had agreed to meet. We'd called her together, my stomach twisting into knots at the sound of her voice on speakerphone. She was guarded, reluctant at first, but after a tense silence, she admitted that it might be best if we all spoke in person, for Caleb's sake if nothing else. I ended the call feeling both dread and a strange sense of relief. At least we weren't staying trapped in limbo. The plan was to meet at a quiet cafe just outside the city. It had a small play area, a few booths tucked away from the crowd, and enough privacy that we wouldn't have to whisper. When the day arrived, I barely slept. My mind raced with possibilities. Would Caleb be there? How would he react if he saw me? I kept imagining 100 worst-case scenarios, each more nerve-wracking than the last. Daniel insisted on driving together, but I sat stiff-backed in the passenger seat, nerves thrumming. Every stoplight felt like a countdown to an event that could make or break our fragile attempts at honesty. Occasionally, he shot me worried glances, probably noticing the way my hands fidgeted over my lap. I couldn't even muster a reassuring smile. Instead, I kept replaying that first moment I'd seen Caleb, how he'd peered around his mother's hip with those big brown eyes, Daniel's eyes. When we arrived, my legs wobbled so badly that Daniel had to place a steadying hand on my elbow. The cafe smelled faintly of coffee and pastries, a cozy aroma completely at odds with my churning stomach. My gaze darted around until I spotted Amelia in a corner booth, Caleb next to her, swinging his legs over the edge of the seat. My breath caught. He looked even smaller than I remembered, his eyes brimming with a quiet curiosity that tugged at my heart. Amelia glanced up, her posture tense, mouth set in a thin line. I could sense her apprehension as we approached, and for a split second, none of us knew who should speak first. Finally, Daniel cleared his throat. "Thanks for agreeing to this," he said, voice trembling just enough that I noticed. She nodded, her eyes darting from him to me. "I think it's time," she replied. Then she turned to Caleb, gently ruffling his hair. "Honey, this is your dad. And this is," her voice caught. I realized she didn't quite know how to introduce me, and the awkwardness twisted something inside my chest. Caleb slid from his seat and stood close to Amelia's side, gazing up at us. "Hi," he said softly. That one simple word nearly made my composure crack. My heart felt pulled in 1,000 directions. Sorrow for the years lost, anger at Daniel's lies, compassion for this innocent child who was thrust into a complicated world not of his making. And beneath all of it, the insistent flutter of my own baby, reminding me that I was now tied to this situation whether I liked it or not. We settled into the booth, Daniel next to me, Amelia and Caleb opposite. For a few minutes we made halting small talk. I found my voice shaky, my palms damp. I couldn't tear my gaze away from the careful way Amelia watched me, as if trying to read whether I was friend or foe. Caleb fiddled with a sugar packet, his lips pressed into a thoughtful line. Every so often he looked from Daniel to me, curiosity evident in his eyes. Eventually Amelia cleared her throat. "Caleb knows you're his dad," she said to Daniel, her tone measured. "He's known for a while, but I didn't want him to be confused until you were ready to fully show up." Daniel exhaled slowly, guilt etched in every line of his face. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I was a coward for not being honest from the start." He shot me a sidelong glance as though afraid I'd leap in and contradict him. I stayed silent, my throat too tight to respond. After a pause, Amelia's gaze shifted to me. "I'm not here to intrude on your relationship," she said, surprising me with the softness in her voice. "But Caleb deserves to know he's cared for by both his parents. I also realize this must be difficult for you." I swallowed hard. "It is," I admitted, forcing the words out. "But you're right. He shouldn't suffer because of our mistakes." My eyes flicked to the boy who was now tracing the condensation on his juice glass. A pang of protectiveness rose in me, for him, for my own child. How had everything become so complicated? Daniel gently rested a hand on my forearm. "We want to do what's best for both Caleb and our baby," he said, his voice faltering on the last part. Amelia's eyes widened slightly, a flash of realization crossing her features as she glanced at my belly. I shifted uncomfortably. For a moment no one spoke. Then Caleb looked up, brows scrunching in concentration. "Are you having a baby too?" he asked, his voice carrying the unfiltered curiosity of a child. My cheeks burned. "Yes," I said softly, trying to muster a small smile. "In a few months you'll have a sibling, I guess." The word caught in my throat. It felt surreal to be talking about siblings when just a short while ago, I didn't even know Caleb existed. His eyes lit with cautious excitement. "Cool," he murmured, and I felt my chest tighten at the simple innocence in his tone. Amelia watched us, shoulders still tense. "I'm not looking to complicate your marriage," she repeated gently, "but I can't keep things hidden anymore. Caleb deserves the chance to know his father, really know him." "I know," Daniel whispered, voice thick. "I want that too." The conversation stretched on, awkward but necessary. We talked about schedules, about possibly arranging visits, about the practical details of ensuring Caleb felt supported. My thoughts whirled, struggling to process the strange reality we were building. Every so often my mind flashed to the betrayal, the months of secrecy. Yet seeing Caleb's shy smile when Daniel asked about his favorite games tugged at something deep inside me. Part of me hated that I could feel any warmth at all in this scenario. It felt like a betrayal of my own anger. By the time we left the cafe, the sky was washed in the warm tones of late afternoon. My nerves felt frayed, my emotions a tangled knot. Daniel and I walked back to the car in silence, still grappling with the weight of what we'd just set in motion. As I climbed into the passenger seat, a wave of exhaustion hit me. Daniel paused before starting the engine, turning to me with an unspoken question in his eyes. I knew we had 1,000 things left to discuss, from how to heal our fractured trust to what role Amelia would play going forward. But all I could do was close my eyes and lean my head against the seat. "I need time," I whispered. "And I need honesty from you, always." He nodded, throat bobbing as he swallowed. "You have my word." Those 4 words felt both reassuring and terrifying. Because if he broke that promise again, I wasn't sure I could survive another betrayal. Yet, despite my doubts, a spark of something akin to hope stirred in my heart. We'd taken a step, a complicated, painful step, toward confronting the truth. Maybe with time we could piece together some kind of future that didn't leave anyone out in the cold. But as we pulled away from the cafe, leaving Amelia and Caleb behind, I couldn't escape the feeling that the hardest part was yet to come. We were on the brink of a storm of emotions, and it would take everything in me to weather it without shattering completely. I woke up the next day feeling like someone had torn my heart into pieces overnight. Despite the uneasy truce from our meeting with Amelia, every thought of Caleb reminded me how fragile everything was. Daniel kept his distance, watching me as if afraid any sudden move might send me running for good. It was almost worse than his silence before. I could see his guilt in every hesitant glance, every cautious question about how I felt or if I needed anything. By midday I couldn't pretend my anxiety wasn't eating me alive. My hands trembled as I tried to slice an apple, and tears kept threatening to spill over at the smallest trigger. I knew I needed some fresh air, so I grabbed my keys, told Daniel I'd be back soon, and headed out. Even his nod of acknowledgement felt riddled with unspoken words. I drove aimlessly, the city streets merging into a blur of pedestrians and passing cars. Eventually, I ended up on a winding road that led to a small lakeside park we used to visit in happier times. Parking near the water, I stepped out and leaned against a wooden railing, the crisp breeze ruffling my hair. The place was nearly empty, save for a jogger or two, and I relished the quiet, hoping it would help me think clearly. Instead, my mind kept cycling through the same painful questions. Could I forgive Daniel for hiding an entire child? Could our marriage survive something so immense? And where did I fit in Caleb's life, or Amelia's? A bittersweet memory flashed. Daniel and I strolling by this very lake, dreaming of a family we never thought possible. My chest tightened with the realization that he'd already been a father then, and I'd had no clue. After a while, I noticed the sky had darkened, heavy clouds threatening rain. Reluctantly, I returned to the car, heading home with my stomach in knots. As soon as I walked through the door, I sensed something had shifted. Daniel was pacing the living room, phone in hand. The instant he saw me, he rushed over, eyes wide with panic. "What's going on?" I asked, my heart lurching at the alarm on his face. He swallowed hard. "Amelia called. She said Caleb's been asking questions. About me, about you, the baby. He's upset, confused." He ran a shaky hand through his hair. "She thinks it might help if we talk to him together soon. Like, together as a family." The word family felt loaded, almost too big to handle. "You mean, you, me, Amelia, and Caleb? All in the same room?" He nodded, guilt flickering across his features. "I know it's a lot. But if we don't handle this carefully, he could end up feeling rejected. I don't want him to think we're ignoring him." I turned away, pressing my palms against the cool wall. My emotions churned as I pictured sitting down with them, an entire family unit I didn't even know existed until days ago. My baby kicked, a stark reminder that our child too would be drawn into this messy web. Daniel took a careful step closer. "Look," he said, voice trembling with desperation, "I know how hard this is. But Caleb's just a kid. He needs reassurance and honesty. And I need you with me. I can't do this alone." Anger flared in me, hot and immediate. "You did it alone for 6 years, I snapped, spinning around to face him. "You made every choice without me. Now you expect me to jump into this as if it's perfectly normal?" He winced, and for a second I regretted the harshness of my tone. But I couldn't deny the sting of betrayal that still lived under my skin. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "If I could turn back time." "You can't," I cut in, voice cracking. "We have to deal with what is, not what might have been." My eyes stung with fresh tears. The world felt heavier with each passing moment, and a sharp headache pulsed behind my eyes. "I'm not sure how much more I can handle, Daniel." His face fell, and for a moment I saw real terror in his eyes. "I'm scared too," he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "But please, give me a chance to prove I'm committed to making this work. For both our children." Exhaustion settled in my bones, making me feel older than my years. One part of me wanted to retreat, to hide from the upheaval and let Daniel sort out his mess alone. Another part, however, tugged me forward, reminding me that if we ever hoped to build a stable life for the baby growing inside me, I had to address this head-on. I sank onto the couch, heartbeat thudding. "What exactly do you propose?" He approached cautiously, sitting on the edge of the coffee table, leaving a few feet of space between us. "Amelia thinks Caleb should see me more consistently, maybe have a weekend visit so he can get used to the idea of me as his dad. Eventually, she wants him to meet you in a calmer setting without the tension of that cafe." My stomach did a slow, queasy flip. "So you'd spend nights at her place? Or you'd bring him here, to our home?" "I'd never ask you to host him without your permission," Daniel answered quickly, hands knotted in his lap. "We can figure out something else if you're not ready for that. Maybe just daytime outings at first. I don't know. He paused, voice quavering. "He's my son. I need to make this right." Tears welled up, but I swallowed the lump in my throat. "And if I say no? If I'm not ready to face him again after everything?" Daniel's shoulders slumped, and he closed his eyes briefly. "Then I'd respect that. But it wouldn't change my obligation to Caleb. I have to be there for him now. I won't hide anymore. I can't. His words landed like a blow, and a cold realization broke through me. If I refused to be part of this process, it might drive a wedge between us that no amount of apologies could repair. Yet the fear of confronting Amelia and Caleb again, the fear of stepping into this new reality, was almost paralyzing. My pulse throbbed in my ears, torn between self-preservation and the faint hope of salvaging something out of this chaos. For what felt like an eternity, I stared at the living room floor, tears silent but persistent. Then with a shaky breath I forced myself to speak. "I'll try," I murmured, hating the wavering in my own voice. "I'll try to be part of whatever this is. But I'm not promising to forgive you overnight." Relief broke across Daniel's face like dawn. He leaned forward as if to embrace me, but a flicker of uncertainty made him pause, waiting for permission. I gave him the smallest nod and he gently wrapped his arms around me. A faint warmth coursed through my chest, mingled with an ache so profound I wasn't sure it would ever fully heal. In that fragile moment I sensed we were both balanced on a precarious edge. One misstep, one broken promise, and we could tumble into an ending neither of us could reverse. Yet as I closed my eyes, a seed of determination sprouted inside me. My life had already been turned upside down and I was still here, still fighting. For my baby, for myself, for a chance, however slim, that Daniel and I could rebuild the bond we once shared. I pulled away, pressing a hand to my abdomen. "I need rest. I'm exhausted." It was the only truth I could utter without crumbling. He nodded, standing. "I'll give you space. If you need anything. I'm right here." As he walked out, the house felt strangely silent, as though holding its breath. My thoughts kept looping back to Caleb's wide-eyed stare. In another world he might have been running around this living room, a rambunctious kid thrilled about a new sibling. Instead we were all caught up in the fallout of lies, trying to piece together the remnants of normalcy. And as I shut my eyes, leaning against the couch cushions, one lingering question pulsed in my mind. Could we ever really be a family, or was this just the calm before the final storm that would tear us apart? I barely slept after that conversation, the weight of our complicated truth pressing down on me like a heavy blanket. Daniel and I coexisted under the same roof, careful around each other, as though any wrong word might break what little civility remained. A tentative plan took shape. He'd begin visiting Caleb more often, gradually letting me take part if and when I felt ready. Yet even as we mapped out the logistics, a quiet ache dug deeper into my heart. One morning Amelia called. Caleb had been asking questions. About me, about the baby, about whether Daniel would finally be there for good. The guilt in Daniel's face was unmistakable as he hung up the phone and asked if I could join them for a small family outing at the park. Just the thought made my chest tighten, but I agreed. Part of me wanted to see if I could navigate this shared reality without falling apart. The day at the park was sunny and bright, alive with the laughter of children. Caleb ran to Daniel instantly, hugging him and grinning from ear to ear. Seeing them like that, father and son, sparked a mix of warmth and sorrow deep within me. Then Caleb turned those big eyes on me. I smiled, even though my stomach flipped with nervous energy. He reached out tentatively and I let him take my hand, my heart aching at how easily he accepted me. Amelia stood by, her posture tense but polite. We spoke in halting sentences about how to structure Caleb's time with Daniel, who would handle school pickups on certain days, whether he could visit our place or if Daniel would stay over at hers. Each detail felt like a fresh reminder of the double life Daniel had kept hidden for so long. Still, Caleb's excitement was genuine. He didn't deserve to see bitterness overshadow his chance at finally knowing his father. After an hour of supervised chaos on the playground, we ended up around a picnic table sharing snacks. Caleb's cheeks were rosy and he chattered about a new toy he wanted to show Daniel. I felt a momentary pang of what-ifs, imagining a parallel world where none of this was a secret from the start. Where maybe I could have been Caleb's friend, even a bonus parent figure, without the stain of betrayal shadowing every interaction. When it was time to leave, Daniel crouched beside Caleb, promising to visit again soon. The boy's eyes flicked from his father to me and a flash of uncertainty crossed his face. Will you come too? He asked. It was a simple question, but it caught me off guard. He'd only just met me, yet already wanted me in his life. Before I could respond, Daniel quickly nodded, glancing at me for confirmation. I swallowed hard, forcing a reassuring smile, though my chest felt hollow. On the drive home, Daniel tried to start a conversation about the future. About how we could integrate Caleb into our lives, how we'd both find a place in his. My silence must have weighed on him because he finally said, "Look, I know it's hard, but maybe we can still have." "I don't know if we can," I cut him off, voice strained. My hands gripped my seatbelt. "It's not just about integrating Caleb. It's about us. I can't forget that you kept him a secret for years. Every time I look at you, I feel that betrayal all over again." He tightened his hold on the steering wheel, knuckles going white. "But you see how important this is, right? For Caleb. For our baby. For everyone." The rest of the ride was a tense hush. When we reached home, I slipped out of the car, heading straight for the bedroom. The baby fluttered in my belly as if echoing my turmoil. I pressed a hand against that small, miraculous life, bitter tears pricking my eyes. I still loved Daniel in some distant way, but each day I realized how badly his lies had cracked the foundation between us. Days turned into a blur of uncomfortable silence. Daniel walked on eggshells, tiptoeing around the subject of where we stood as a couple. I stayed lost in my own thoughts, torn between anger and the desire for a stable family for our child. Meanwhile, his visits with Caleb grew more frequent. Sometimes I joined, keeping a careful distance, offering polite smiles that never quite reached my eyes. Finally, one evening, Daniel mustered the courage to bring it up again. "We can keep trying," he whispered, standing in the living room where so many of our memories clung to the walls. "I love you. I love our baby. We can make this work." I looked at him, truly looked at him, and felt a twist of heartbreak deep inside. "Daniel," I said gently, "I can't pretend that trust isn't broken. I'll never keep you from your son, or from ours. But I can't keep living under the same roof, trying to stitch together what's left of us when a huge piece of me is gone." His eyes pooled with tears, but he stood silently, accepting the finality in my voice. We both knew this was a crossroads we couldn't avoid any longer. The next day I packed a few belongings and left our home. It felt surreal stepping through the front door with a suitcase in hand, tears sliding down my cheeks as he watched from the living room. But with every step I felt a strange sense of clarity amid the heartbreak. I settled into a small apartment on the other side of town, not far enough to cut him off completely, but distant enough to breathe. Over the following weeks, Daniel and I established a fragile co-parenting arrangement for when our baby arrived. He poured more energy into bonding with Caleb, making up for lost time. I watched from the sidelines, both happy that he was finally doing the right thing and devastated that it had come at the cost of our marriage. Word slowly spread among friends and family that we weren't together anymore. Some were shocked, others sympathetic, but no one knew the full depth of why I had to walk away. Only Daniel, Amelia, and I truly understood the pain lurking beneath the surface. Yet, in that strange, bittersweet way, we found a sort of balance for the sake of the children. Caleb got to know his father, and I learned to navigate my pregnancy without Daniel's constant presence. It wasn't easy, but each day proved that I was stronger than I ever imagined. Near the end of my pregnancy, Daniel came by with a box of baby supplies. Tiny clothes, blankets, bottles. We spoke quietly by the door, both of us grappling with unspoken sorrow. Before he left, he looked at my rounded belly, voice thick with regret. "I wish things could have been different." "Me too," I whispered, tears threatening to spill over. But I'd shed enough tears to last a lifetime. This was our reality now. He left, and I stood there, hand resting on my baby bump, realizing that sometimes love alone isn't enough to mend what betrayal breaks. Even so, I felt a glimmer of something like hope. Our child would have a father and a half-brother, a wider sense of family than I'd ever known. And though it wasn't the picture I'd painted in my dreams, it was honest. No more secrets, no more illusions. And maybe in time that honesty would be enough to build a different sort of happiness, one where I could raise my baby with a clear heart, forging my own path forward. I wiped my tears, inhaled, and closed the door on the life we once shared, ready to face whatever came next.